Olivia had always prided herself on being a devoted wife. But lately, something was missing. Her marriage to Daniel, once full of passion and excitement, had settled into a predictable routine that left her feeling empty. While Daniel, a dedicated architect, worked tirelessly to provide for their family, Olivia found herself yearning for something more. She longed for adventure, for the thrill of feeling truly alive. It was during one of her routine walks to the coffee shop that she met Ethan. A charismatic young man with an infectious smile. Ethan was fresh out of university and had recently started working as a photographer. A job that fed his free-spirited nature. He was everything Olivia felt she had lost: spontaneous, passionate, and full of life. Their first conversation was effortless. And for the first time in ages, Olivia felt a spark of something that had long been dormant. Ethan's energy made her feel seen, heard, and alive in a way Daniel hadn't in years. As days passed, their connection deepened, and Olivia couldn't ignore the excitement that swelled within her each time they spoke. But she was torn. While Ethan ignited her, Daniel, her husband, remained a steady anchor, though one she now feared was holding her back from living her truth. As weeks went by, Olivia found herself drawn deeper into the intoxicating web of her connection with Ethan. What had started as harmless conversation over coffee became secret meetings, stolen moments, and whispered conversations in the quiet corners of the city. Ethan had a way of making her feel things she hadn't felt in years: excitement, desire, and the rush of new possibilities. Each time they met, her heart raced with anticipation. But along with the thrill came the gnawing weight of guilt. At home, Daniel was completely unaware of the growing distance between them. He continued his routine, lost in his work, while Olivia struggled to find her place in a life that no longer felt fulfilling. The contrast between the life she shared with Daniel, comfortable, predictable, but increasingly distant, and the unpredictable spark she had found with Ethan was beginning to tear at her. She began questioning everything. Was this feeling of excitement real, or just a fleeting escape from a marriage that had lost its fire? Ethan's presence had become a mirror reflecting everything Olivia had been missing. But as their connection deepened, she realized she couldn't continue living in two worlds. The guilt gnawed at her, and she knew she was on the verge of making a decision that could change everything. Olivia's world was starting to unravel. She had always prided herself on being a devoted wife. But as time passed, she began to feel trapped in a life that no longer made her feel alive. The passion between her and Daniel had long faded, replaced by the dull hum of routine. When she met Ethan, everything shifted. He brought with him a spark she hadn't realized she craved, a youthful energy that reignited a sense of possibility. Their connection was undeniable, yet so dangerous. The stolen glances, the lingering touches, the way he made her laugh, each encounter felt like an escape from the life she felt suffocated by. But the more time they spent together, the more she questioned her own choices. Was it just the thrill of something new? Or was this the real connection she had been searching for? The moments she shared with Ethan started to consume her thoughts. And as her feelings grew deeper, so did her guilt. At home, Daniel remained oblivious, continuing his work while Olivia slipped further away. She didn't want to hurt him, but the longing she felt for Ethan was growing too strong to ignore. Torn between the man she loved and the man who made her feel seen, Olivia knew that soon she would have to face the truth of her heart. Olivia's world had slowly been crumbling, her marriage to Daniel hanging by a thread. The vibrant connection they once shared had faded into a monotony of daily routines and unspoken distance. As the years went on, Olivia found herself drifting, her heart yearning for something more, something that reignited the spark she felt was long extinguished. Enter Ethan. From the moment they met, he breathed fresh air into her life. Ethan's passion, his easygoing nature, and the way he truly listened to her made her feel seen in ways Daniel hadn't for years. Their conversations flowed effortlessly, and what started as harmless banter at work soon morphed into something deeper, more intimate. Olivia felt a connection with Ethan that both thrilled and terrified her. Each stolen glance, every touch of his hand, was like a dangerous secret she couldn't resist. But with every moment spent with him, Olivia's guilt grew. She loved Daniel, and yet the excitement she experienced with Ethan was undeniable, pulling her in directions she had never anticipated. As the months passed, the lines between what was right and wrong began to blur. Olivia was caught in a whirlwind of emotions: passion, guilt, desire, and knew she would have to face the consequences of her actions sooner rather than later. Olivia's double life had begun to feel like a tightrope walk, each step filled with a growing sense of danger and exhilaration. With Daniel at home, oblivious to her internal turmoil, she found herself torn between the safe, predictable life they had built and the wild, intoxicating connection she shared with Ethan. The stolen moments, the secret rendezvous, the whispered conversations, everything with Ethan felt like a desperate breath of fresh air she hadn't realized she needed. He made her feel desired, alive, something Daniel hadn't done in years. Yet, the guilt gnawed at her relentlessly. Every time she went home to Daniel, the weight of her secret grew heavier. She longed for the excitement of Ethan's presence, but at the same time, she didn't want to lose the stability and love she'd known with Daniel. The contrast was sharp, as though her heart was being torn in two different directions. Each evening she spent with Daniel, the normalcy of their life seemed suffocating, and each time she was with Ethan, she felt like she was living in a dream, one that could collapse with a single wrong move. The fear of discovery hovered over her like a storm cloud, but so did the fear of losing what she had with Ethan, making the decision that loomed ahead all the more terrifying. As Olivia's affair with Ethan continued, the thrill of their secret world began to fade, leaving behind a trail of anxiety and self-doubt. The tension between her two lives grew unbearable. At home, Daniel was still the loving, attentive husband he had always been, but with each passing day, Olivia felt more like a stranger to him. Their conversations became hollow, and the distance between them seemed insurmountable. Meanwhile, Ethan, with his youthful energy and raw passion, had become a forbidden escape, a temporary reprieve from the monotony that had crept into her marriage. Yet, despite the excitement he brought, Olivia couldn't ignore the deep sense of guilt weighing on her. She had crossed a line she couldn't uncross, and with each stolen moment, the truth felt closer to the surface. One evening, as she sat across from Daniel, watching him laugh and recount his day, Olivia felt a growing sense of claustrophobia. It was as though the walls of her life were closing in on her, suffocating her under the weight of the lies. She loved Daniel, but how could she reconcile the woman she was becoming with the woman she used to be? Every step forward with Ethan seemed to push her further away from everything she held dear. And Olivia knew she was teetering on the edge of something she couldn't control. The days that followed were a whirlwind of conflicting emotions for Olivia. The excitement of her secret rendezvous with Ethan clashed with the deepening guilt that gnawed at her with every passing moment. She had always prided herself on being loyal, trustworthy, and committed to Daniel, but now those very qualities seemed like distant memories. Every time Ethan smiled at her, every stolen kiss in the dim light of their secret meetings, it felt like an exhilarating escape from the mundane. But the reality of her marriage, of the man who had once been her rock, who still loved her, became harder to ignore. Daniel, though oblivious to her affair, had begun to sense the shift in her. His once persistent questions about her well-being now seemed more probing, as though he could feel the distance between them growing. And yet, Olivia found herself lying more, fabricating reasons to explain her absences, or glossing over the fact that her thoughts were consumed by Ethan. Her heart ached as she realized that she was living a double life, one with the comfort and predictability of her marriage, and one with the intoxicating passion of her affair. But each moment with Ethan only deepened her internal conflict. The woman she had once been, the woman who had believed in love and commitment, was being overshadowed by someone she didn't recognize anymore. As the weeks wore on, Olivia found herself standing at a crossroads, torn between the two lives she had so carefully compartmentalized. The thrill of her secret affair with Ethan was undeniable. It was a rush she hadn't felt in years, the kind of passion and excitement she had longed for since the early days of her marriage with Daniel. Ethan made her feel seen, wanted, alive in a way she hadn't realized she was missing. But with every stolen moment, the weight of the lies grew heavier, pressing down on her with a suffocating force. She tried to focus on her marriage, tried to recapture the connection with Daniel that had once been so effortless. But it wasn't the same. Their conversations had become mechanical, centered around bills, work, and the logistics of life. Olivia realized how much she had neglected their relationship, how the spark between them had dimmed over the years. She had buried her own desires for the sake of routine. And now, standing on the edge of this dangerous precipice, she didn't know how to step back. One evening, as she watched Daniel laugh at something on TV, a pang of guilt stabbed through her heart. She loved him, but the pull of Ethan, The pull of something new and thrilling was overwhelming. Olivia knew that at some point, she would have to face the consequences of her choices. But for now, she was trapped in the whirlwind of her own desires, unsure of which path to take. The day Olivia walked into the office, she felt the weight of her secret pressing on her chest. She had been keeping her affair with Ethan hidden for months, balancing the lies, the guilt, and the growing desire for him that refused to be ignored. Each day with Ethan felt like an intoxicating escape, yet it left her more conflicted than ever. She loved Daniel, her husband of nearly a decade, and their life together meant so much to her. But every time Ethan smiled, every time their hands brushed, it was as though she was finally waking up from a long, monotonous slumber. The risk of exposure loomed like a storm cloud over her every interaction with Ethan. She had convinced herself that it was just a fleeting thing, that it didn't have to ruin her marriage. But the more time they spent together, the more Olivia realized she was losing herself in a fantasy, a dream of something different, something she wasn't sure she could ever have with Daniel again. On a quiet afternoon, as she stared out the window at the rain streaking down the glass, Olivia couldn't help but wonder how much longer she could keep up the charade. She was living a lie, one that threatened to unravel everything. The dread of being caught was overwhelming, but so was the pull of Ethan, and in that moment, she realized she might already be too deep to turn back. The days following Olivia's confession were filled with unbearable silence, a thick tension hanging between her and Daniel. She had never imagined herself in this position, caught between the love she had for her husband and the excitement Ethan had ignited within her. The weight of her choices crushed her every time she looked into Daniel's eyes, his confusion, his hurt. It was all too much. She had shattered their world with a single mistake, and now she had to face the consequences. Yet, part of her felt an unshakable pull toward Ethan. Their connection had become something real, something undeniable, but at what cost? Olivia knew she had to make a decision. The longer she allowed herself to live in this web of deceit, the more damage it would cause. She loved Daniel, but Ethan made her feel alive in a way she hadn't felt in years. It wasn't fair to either man. The only way to move forward was to come clean, to stop pretending. One night, as the reality of the situation weighed heavily on her, she sat down with Daniel. The words she had rehearsed in her head didn't come out as planned. Everything seemed too raw, too real. But as Daniel listened, his eyes full of pain, Olivia finally realized that no matter which path she chose, she needed to rebuild her life with honesty, even if it meant walking away from everything she had known. In today's fast-paced world, it's easy to lose sight of what truly matters: our relationships and the deep connections that make us feel whole. Olivia's story is a stark reminder that while chasing excitement or novelty can feel invigorating, it often comes at a high price. Before making decisions driven by fleeting emotions, it's essential to reflect on the long-term impact they may have on those we love. Open, honest communication and self-reflection are key to navigating any relationship. Don't let guilt and deceit cloud your choices. True fulfillment comes from being authentic and nurturing the bonds that truly matter.